Alan squinted into the middle distance. There it was again, a faint yellow glow barely visible through the thick fog that surrounded him. It seemed to flicker in and out of existence in regular intervals, like a heartbeat, its golden light promising the hint of escape from his grim predicament. It felt like hours he had been walking, the same dull earth hard beneath his feet, the grass coarse and stunted like a sickness had come over it. No features broke up the maddening landscape. No rocks, no trees, simply mile upon mile of gloomy, dead land. Every few steps giving birth to a new patch as what was behind him was consumed by the hungry fog. The wind howled and blew angrily as he struggled against it, desperation beginning to grip him as he continued to stride forth towards the blinking glow, hanging like a bulb in what might have been the sky. Alan couldn't recall ever leaving his cottage, nor could he comprehend a reason as to why he would have done so in this damnable weather. If he hadn't been for the faint glimpse of hope in front of him, he would have fallen to his knees a long time ago, giving himself up to the clutches of nature. He could feel his knees weakening with each monumental step his boots took across the dark ground beneath him. Not long now. One way or another he would soon find some conclusion to this hellish encounter, and at least some comfort could be found in that. Faltering as his toe caught in a waiting divot, Alan attempted to save himself, his legs stumbling in a series of quick, uneducated steps, dancing with his momentum. He instantly knew his efforts were in vain as he gave in to his fall and crashed into the cold earth. Despair crushed him like a boulder rolling across his back. He would perish here, in this desolate part of the world, fading into obscurity as his body was drawn back into the earth after a short time, simply adding to the dusty soil that already covered the place. He glanced up one last time before giving himself up to his fate. He saw it again, the flicker, the light, brighter this time and more golden, and somehow higher, towering over him. His heart leapt as he grasped at the grass in front of him, hauling himself forwards, the thought of this ethereal saviour burning in his mind and fueling his desire not to allow this empty landscape to defeat him. A crash filled his ears, halting him where he still lay, and then the sound of another. The sea, he realized. The light in front of him burned with a greater fury. With every inch he pulled himself closer to it. Suddenly an outline began to emerge from the fog. A dark shape, becoming increasingly more solid as the mist peeled away from its form. Alan slowly lifted his head to stare at the obelisk that had emerged in front of him, the light still blinking, so bright now that he could only glance at it. His wind-beaten mind finally recognized the white and crimson rings that graced its height. A lighthouse. The prospect of another human and some kind of hospitality allowed him to find the strength to stand and stagger over towards his perceived salvation. Alan found the door, an ancient wooden slab carved with intricate symbols which appeared to tell some forgotten story. A single small square glass window was nestled into the centre of the top portion, its face crossed by a series of thin metal bars to protect it from shattering in the harsh coastal conditions. Slowly he reached out and grasped the cold iron ring that acted as a handle. He twisted and pulled against the rusty metal, rattling it against the frame, and even using both hands to try and create some give. It was locked. He pressed his face up to the little window and peered inside. He could see shadows, ghostly outlines of several people moving about inside. He began to pound his fist on the door. He could feel it shake in its hinges. He willed for someone inside to hear his desperate knocking, his plea to be let inside, for he wasn't sure how much longer he could last outside in the elements. Suddenly he stopped his furious attempt to be granted entry. The shadowy outlines of the people inside had frozen. Slowly they moved together to end up standing framed in the window. Though he could not be certain, he was sure they were looking at him. He cautiously broke into a grin, believing his salvation had come at last. But they did not move any further. They simply stood where they were, their spectral faces piercing through him with a cold venom, their lack of visible features casting a doubt within Alan that they would never be seen by him. "Why won't you help me?" he called, his voice trailing off into a murmur as he tried to comprehend the callous hesitation of these eerie figures. There was no response. Despair gripped Alan as he pulled his face back from the window, the shadows within drawing back and fading into the interior of the lighthouse. He felt nothing but abandon as his weary body slid down the door. He felt the cold caress of the soft wood as he slumped to the floor. He stared out to the sea, watching the pale waves crash over one another in a chaotic symphony that would have been pleasant if not for the biting cold that clutched him. He felt himself letting go. He caught glimpses of dark shapes circling above him, more and more coming to settle on the land around him. He cared too little to be afraid. His mind wandered into the unknown. He felt the hard earth beneath his fingers and slowly drifted away into nothing.